The wind howled across the broken remains of what was once Route 17, dragging dust and dried leaves through the skeletal remains of burnt-out vehicles. On the outskirts of what used to be a thriving city now reduced to ruins, silence reigned, unnatural, eerie, and absolute. Not even the moan of the undead echoed here. This place wasn't just dead. It had been forgotten. Until now. Cora Hayes adjusted the makeshift antenna sticking out of her cracked radio, her breath catching as a faint hiss of static transformed into a broken, jittery voice. She hadn't heard a broadcast in weeks, certainly not one this deep inside the dead zone. Most survivors believed this part of the country was unrecoverable, a graveyard of failed rescue attempts and endless horror. But the voice was real. Any survivors, listening, coordinates, shelter. Then silence again. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, turning toward Mason, her second in command and the only person who had followed her this far into the dead zone. Mason nodded grimly. Could be a trap. Could also be the last chance anyone has. They were camped inside a half-collapsed diner, the kind where families used to laugh over pancakes and coffee. Now, mold claimed the walls and the scent of ash lingered in the air like an old ghost. Through the cracked windows, the skyline of the dead city loomed like a warning, gray towers swallowed by time and shadows. Cora studied a paper map spread across a dusty table. The coordinates matched a point right in the center of the dead zone, an area redlined on every resistance chart. No drones, no patrols, not even scouts dared venture that far. Rumor had it that even the undead avoided that place, which only deepened the mystery. "We move at first light," she said, folding the map. "If there's a chance someone's alive and trying to reach out, we owe it to them to find out." Mason didn't argue. He never did when her tone carried that quiet certainty. It had saved them too many times before. By morning, the pair were on the move, slipping through the shadows of abandoned alleyways and overgrown streets. The world around them was a shell, no signs of life, no signs of death. Just stillness. At noon, they stopped to rest in a rooftop greenhouse, surprisingly intact, vines curling up shattered glass panes. There, they met someone unexpected. A boy, no older than 12, crouched behind an overturned table with a slingshot and a wary glare. His clothes were too big, patched and ragged. His face was smudged with dirt, but his eyes were sharp. "You're not from here," the boy said before they could even speak. Cora raised her hands. "We don't want trouble. We picked up a signal. We're heading toward the coordinates." The boy's eyes narrowed. "Most people head away from the center. You two are stupid, or desperate." "Maybe both," Mason muttered. The boy considered them for a moment, then pointed toward the street below. "You're close. But if you go straight in, you'll never make it. The city doesn't like strangers anymore." "What do you mean?" Cora asked. He stood slowly, slinging a small bag over his shoulder. "You'll see." Without another word, he jumped off the edge, landing with surprising agility on a lower ledge before disappearing into a building below. Cora exchanged a glance with Mason. "We follow," she said. The sun was starting to fall by the time they reached the outer edge of the old city center. This wasn't the crumbling concrete of the outskirts. This part of the dead zone looked frozen in time, like the chaos had paused. Streets were clean. Cars unburned. Storefronts intact. And yet, not a soul stirred. It was too quiet. They moved carefully, listening for the telltale groan or scrape that might signal undead nearby. But there was nothing. Then they found the first sign, a wall scrawled with the words "We stay hidden to stay alive." Painted beneath it was a symbol, 3 concentric circles with a line through them. Cora recognized it. Resistance code. It meant safe house nearby. "There's someone here," Mason said, voice low. Someone organized. Before they could investigate further, a low hum filled the air. The signal again. Cora pulled out her radio. This is Haven 9. If you're hearing this, you've made it. Then a door in a nearby alley opened. And the boy from earlier waved them in. Welcome to the heart of darkness, he said. Where the rules are different. The boy led Cora and Mason through a winding tunnel carved beneath the city, its walls lined with rusted pipes and flickering lanterns. The deeper they went, the more the noise of the world above faded, replaced by the hum of machinery and the soft murmur of voices. Cora kept her hand close to her weapon, though the silence wasn't threatening, it was controlled. Whatever this place was, it didn't match the chaos they'd faced outside. Someone was keeping things in order. I'm called Kip, the boy said, glancing back. And if you're going to stay, you'll need to meet the Circle. The Circle? Mason asked, raising an eyebrow. They run the fortress. They decide who stays and who gets sent back out. Cora didn't like the sound of that. They'd risked everything to get here, and she didn't intend to be turned away because of politics or paranoia. Still, she said nothing, letting Kip guide them past checkpoints where guards, real guards, stood with makeshift armor, old riot shields, and disciplined expressions. They weren't scavengers. They looked trained. Finally, the tunnel opened into a cavernous space lit by salvaged lights strung across the ceiling like stars. Beneath them lay a hidden world, rows of bunks, medical tents, a greenhouse powered by old solar panels, and even a schoolroom marked with colorful signs. It was more than shelter. It was civilization. Cora felt a wave of emotion crash over her. She hadn't seen anything like this in years. It reminded her of what the world used to be. A woman in her 40s approached them, flanked by two others. She wore a patched leather jacket and carried a data tablet strapped to her arm. Her eyes were sharp, appraising. I'm Lena. Spokesperson for the Circle, she said. We picked up your response. You came from outside? We followed the signal, Cora said. Didn't expect this. Lena nodded. Few do. We've worked hard to keep this place hidden. That broadcast is a risk. But if we don't reach out, we fade into myth. Mason stepped forward. You've got food, water, power. How? Lena smiled faintly. Ingenuity. Sacrifice. And a little luck. She led them deeper into the compound, past hydroponic farms growing vegetables in old bathtubs and batteries hooked up to scavenged solar panels. It was like stepping into a dream. We call this place Core Haven, Lena said. It used to be an old Cold War bunker. Most of the city forgot it even existed. When the outbreak came, a few of us remembered. Cora glanced at the thick concrete ceiling above. It's incredible. Why haven't you sent word to the resistance? We tried. But the signal barely reaches past the inner circle of the city. Too much interference. The dead aren't the only threat here. She tapped the tablet and pulled up a series of maps and diagrams. There's something different in the heart of the zone. We call it the pulse. It's blocking our comms, jamming drones, even drawing the infected toward it like a magnet. Kip piped up, his voice quieter now. It's why I was out there. Looking for people who might know how to stop it. Cora felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. You think we can help? You're not the first to try, Lena said. But you might be the first to get this far alive. Later, Cora and Mason were given a space in a shared barracks, a simple bed and a trunk for their things. Mason sat on the edge of the cot, eyes scanning the room. This place is too quiet, he muttered. Cora nodded. They've done the impossible, but something feels wrong. That night, she couldn't sleep. The hum of electricity, once comforting, now sounded unnatural. She rose and wandered the corridors, ending up near the pulse monitoring room. Kip was inside, staring at a monitor. He looked up as she entered. Couldn't sleep either. No. What is that thing, Kip? Really? He hesitated. Then he whispered, some say it's a machine. Others say it's alive. All I know is, ever since it activated, we've lost people. Scouts vanish. Zombies act strange. Sometimes, we hear voices that aren't ours. Cora's blood chilled. Voices? He nodded. The pulse does more than jam signals. It changes things. We think it's waking something buried. Cora stared at the screen. A red dot pulsed steadily in the center of the map. It looked small. But deep down, she knew it was anything but. The next morning, the pulse was still on Cora's mind. She sat at a communal table in Core Haven's mess hall, stirring her oatmeal while conversations buzzed quietly around her. No one mentioned the pulse openly, but it lingered in the air like smoke, something everyone could feel but no one dared to name. Mason slid onto the bench beside her, chewing on a ration bar. You were gone most of the night. Didn't sleep, she said. Too many questions. About the pulse? She nodded slowly. Kip said they've lost people. Good scouts. The undead are being drawn to it, like it's calling them. And worse, he said they've heard voices. Whispering, inside their heads. Mason gave her a sideways glance. And you believe him? I believe something is happening. Whether it's technical, chemical, or something we can't explain yet, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not natural. Before Mason could respond, an alarm blared through the base, a low, vibrating tone. Not an attack siren, but something more urgent. The kind of alarm that meant something was already wrong. Lena's voice came over the intercom. All Circle members and visiting scouts, report to command immediately. We've lost contact with North Outpost. Repeat, North Outpost is down. Cora and Mason exchanged looks and sprinted toward the command center. Inside, tension filled the air. Screens showed static where the outpost's feed should have been. A map displayed the coordinates. North Outpost was positioned just 3 blocks from the pulse's center, meant to monitor activity without crossing into its direct range. Lena stood at the helm, her jaw clenched. We had 3 scouts there. No distress signal, no signs of struggle. Just, gone. Cora stepped forward. Let us go. Mason and I can check it out. You said yourself we're not the first outsiders to reach this place. Maybe we'll see something your people didn't. Lena hesitated. It's too dangerous. You'd be walking into a blind zone. We've done it before, Mason said flatly. Finally, Lena nodded. Take Kip with you. He knows the path. An hour later, the 3 of them moved silently through the narrow backstreets leading toward the outpost. The closer they got to the pulse's range, the more distorted the world became. The air felt heavier. Radios sputtered with static. A low-frequency hum, barely audible, throbbed just beneath their feet. Even the light seemed dimmer, as if the sun didn't dare touch this place. When they reached the North Outpost, the checkpoint was wide open. A chair still rocked faintly by the gate. Cora raised her weapon, eyes scanning the shadows. No blood. No signs of struggle. Then where are the scouts? Kip whispered. They moved deeper into the station. Inside, it looked like the 3 scouts had simply stood up and walked away, equipment still warm, food half-eaten, a kettle boiling dry on a hot plate. This doesn't make sense, Mason muttered. If this was an attack, they would have fought back. Cora crouched by a desk. A journal lay open, pages scattered across the surface. She scanned the last few lines. Lights in the distance. Moving in unnatural patterns. Too smooth. Not human. One of us says he hears a voice telling him to go outside. We locked the doors. No more entries until morning. Cora looked around. Doors are unlocked. They didn't wait. Then Kip called out from the far end of the outpost. You need to see this. They rushed over. Kip was kneeling near the entrance to a tunnel that hadn't appeared on any of Core Haven's maps. A freshly broken lock hung from the side. The tunnel led down, straight toward the direction of the pulse. This wasn't here last week, Kip said. Cora peered into the dark. There were no footprints. No blood. No signs of anything except a lingering presence. Mason shivered. They went in there. Cora felt it too. A pull. Not physical, not even emotional, just a sensation, like something calling softly from deep within the earth. We're not equipped for this, Mason warned. We can't go back empty-handed, Cora replied. If the pulse is creating tunnels, it means it's spreading. Kip looked nervous. We go down there, we might not come back. I'd rather know what we're facing than wait for it to come knocking, Cora said. They stood at the edge of the tunnel, staring into the black unknown. The hum of the pulse grew louder. Then, from deep within, they heard something that turned their blood cold. A voice. Not groaning. Not undead. A human voice. Calling Kip's name. Kip froze. The voice echoed up from the darkness like a ripple in still water, soft, unmistakable, and terrifying. It was his sister's. But that wasn't possible. Cora grabbed his arm gently. Kip, she said firmly, your sister, she didn't come with us. She's gone. You told us that. Kip's jaw trembled. I did. But that was her voice. I'd know it anywhere. Mason aimed his flashlight into the tunnel. The beam vanished into shadows, swallowed by thick, stale air. It's mimicking people, he said. Trying to pull us in. But how would it know her name? Cora whispered. No one answered. The air was too heavy for that. They made the decision fast. Backtracking now meant leaving questions unanswered. Going forward meant risking the unknown. But they were too deep into the mystery to turn away. Cora stepped into the tunnel first, the silence wrapping around her like a second skin. Kip followed close behind, still shaken, and Mason brought up the rear, keeping his weapon ready. The path spiraled downward. The walls were damp, lined with veins of pulsing blue light, like the tunnel itself was alive. The further they descended, the louder the hum of the pulse became. It vibrated in their teeth, filled their ears, made their skin prickle. After 20 minutes, they entered a large chamber carved into the rock. It had been a subway station once, decades ago, but now it looked like a cathedral of ruin. Makeshift beds lined one wall, abandoned gear littered the floor, and strange symbols had been burned into the tiles. And there, in the center of it all, stood one of the missing scouts. He turned slowly as they approached. His eyes were blank. Cora held her breath. Reed? The man said nothing. Kip stepped forward. Reed, it's me, Kip. What happened? Reed blinked. Kip, he repeated slowly, like testing the word in his mouth. Kip. 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 Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A hollow one. The kind of smile that didn't belong to the man they'd once known. Cora reached for Kip's shoulder and pulled him back. Reed took one step forward. She's waiting, he said in a voice that seemed to echo from inside the walls. She wants to meet you. She? Mason asked quietly. Reed didn't answer. His head tilted, eyes going wide. Then the humming stopped. All at once, silence fell. Complete and absolute. Cora realized how much they had grown used to that background thrum. Its absence was jarring. Wrong. And then, movement. From the far shadows of the tunnel, figures began to appear. Dozens. Maybe more. They were human, but not. Their movements were stiff, unnatural. Their eyes wide and glowing faintly with the same pulsing blue as the veins in the walls. Kip backed up slowly. They're connected to it. Run, Cora ordered. Back the way we came. They turned and sprinted up the tunnel. Behind them, the glowing figures didn't run. They walked, but the sound of their synchronized footsteps echoed like a warning drumbeat. Cora's flashlight flickered. The walls seemed to breathe. The tunnel narrowed as they climbed, the walls closing in. Just as panic threatened to take hold, they burst through the entrance and out into daylight. The humming returned. The voices stopped. And the glowing figures didn't follow. Cora collapsed against the wall, catching her breath. Kip was pale, shaking. Mason checked the surroundings, then turned to Cora. They weren't zombies. No, she agreed. Something else. Controlled. Rewritten. Kip finally found his voice. The pulse, it's not just a signal or a device. It's learning. It's using memories. Voices. Faces. To pull people in. They headed back to Core Haven in silence, thoughts heavy and grim. The mystery had deepened. The threat was far worse than they'd feared. When they returned to the circle, Lena was waiting. "You're back earlier than expected," she said. "What did you find?" Cora handed her the journal they'd taken from the outpost. They didn't die. They didn't run. The pulse took them. And now they're part of something else. Lena frowned. "You're saying it's reanimating the living?" "No," Mason said. "It's hijacking them. Keeping their bodies. Overriding their minds. And it's growing." A silence fell across the room. Then Lena said, "If this spreads beyond the dead zone." "It won't stop," Cora finished. Lena exhaled slowly. "Then we're not just holding a fortress anymore. We're standing between humanity and extinction," Mason added. Kip stepped forward. "Then we fight. Whatever this thing is, it knows us. But now, we know it." Cora nodded grimly. "And we're going to stop it. Before it rewrites the world." The mood inside Core Haven had shifted. The walls of their underground fortress once hummed with quiet hope, with the illusion that isolation could offer safety. But now, after Cora, Mason, and Kip's return from the tunnels beneath the pulse, that hope had been fractured. Cora stood before the circle, a group of Core Haven's leaders and engineers seated in a semicircle, silent and tense. Maps of the dead zone lined the walls, and fresh markers, indicating controlled zones, had been drawn with red ink. Lena was the first to speak. "You're certain these people were conscious?" she asked, arms crossed. "Not undead. Not infected." They responded, Mason said, voice low. One of them even spoke Kip's name. "It wasn't like any infection we've ever seen. They were alive, but hollow. Like puppets." Kip stepped forward. "And they were waiting for us. As if they knew we were coming." The engineers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a woman named Dr. Chen, tapped on her tablet and brought up a diagram of the pulse's known signal range. "We've always assumed the pulse was jamming equipment and disrupting communications," she said. "But if what you're saying is true, it's not just passive interference, it's active control." "Then what is it?" Lena asked. Cora stepped forward. "It's something intelligent. Not human. Maybe it was dormant for years, until something triggered it." Kip looked around the room. "We've got to destroy it." "Destroy what?" Lena countered. "We still don't even know what it is. A machine? A hive mind? A buried AI? If we strike without knowing what we're dealing with, we could make it stronger." Silence followed. Then Cora said what they were all thinking. We need a team. Not just to observe, but to go in. Get close. Find the source. And find a way to shut it down before it spreads beyond the dead zone. She looked to Lena. Form the resistance. 2 days later, Core Haven had changed. A training zone had been cleared near the old subway tunnels. People were practicing weapons, setting up communication lines, preparing medical stations. This wasn't a sanctuary anymore, it was a staging ground. They called themselves the Inner Ring Resistance. At the center were Cora, Mason, Kip, Lena, Dr. Chen, and a handful of brave volunteers. Mechanics, scouts, engineers, medics. People who knew how to adapt, how to survive. Dr. Chen worked day and night trying to decrypt pieces of the pulse's frequencies. What she found only deepened the mystery. It's not just broadcasting a signal, she explained, showing Cora a screen filled with wave patterns. It's listening too. Like sonar. It reflects and adapts. Every time we approach, it changes frequency. Learning, Cora muttered. Like Kip said. It's evolving. Chen nodded. If it is artificial, it may be some kind of self-replicating signal, an AI infection spreading through sound and electromagnetic fields. And if it's not artificial? Mason asked. No one had an answer. That night, Cora stood alone on the surface, staring toward the heart of the dead zone. In the distance, the faint blue glow of the pulse shimmered in the sky like a false star. She thought of the lives already lost. The people who'd disappeared without a trace. The scout who'd smiled at her with empty eyes. Mason joined her quietly. You think we're ready? No, she admitted. But we can't wait any longer. Below them, the resistance prepared. Caches were packed. Weapons checked. Devices designed to jam signals were mounted on backpacks. If the pulse could hijack minds through waves, they would fight it with silence, with shielding, with everything they had left. Kip approached with his small gear bag slung over one shoulder. You sure you want to come with us? Cora asked. My sister's voice came from down there, Kip said, jaw set. Either she's still alive, or she's part of it. I need to know which. Mason nodded. Then we finish this. Together. Cora looked back at the fortress, at the people who watched them like quiet shadows. For them, and for everyone who never made it this far, this mission had to count. They would not be another outpost that vanished. They would be the last line. At dawn, the resistance team stepped beyond the edge of Core Haven's safety zone. The streets were silent, but not dead. From the corners of broken buildings and cracks in the pavement, the blue light seemed to shimmer just beneath the surface. They passed by a window covered in scratch marks, with a final message scrawled across the glass in red paint. The pulse sees. The pulse waits. And just beyond that, the tunnels began again. Cora glanced at Kip, then Mason. This is it. The resistance vanished into the dark. The air inside the tunnel was different this time. It wasn't just cold, it was listening. Every breath, every footstep, seemed amplified by the silence. The resistance team moved in a tight formation, Cora at the front, Kip just behind her, Mason watching their flank. Lena, Dr. Chen, and 2 others, Torres and Malik, completed the group. 8 people, heading toward what might be the last place on Earth where the world still hadn't ended, because it hadn't finished transforming. Dr. Chen checked her scanner again. The screen flickered, trying to process frequencies beyond normal human hearing. We're close, she said quietly. The pulse's readings are intensifying. We're inside its primary range. That meant they had less than an hour before the jamming started affecting cognition, memory, direction, even emotions. According to Chen, prolonged exposure to the pulse altered perception. The scouts who stayed too long had started hearing voices, seeing people who weren't there, and then they stopped being themselves. No one spoke as they entered a vast open chamber, an old transportation hub twisted by time and light. The walls pulsed faintly, veins of blue energy webbing through the concrete like a living thing. In the center of the room stood a tower-like structure, sleek and alien. It wasn't built by any known technology. No screws. No seams. Just smooth, dark metal humming with energy. The pulse. Kip swallowed hard. That's it. Cora stepped forward, but Mason stopped her. Look. Figures stood silently around the base of the tower. A dozen or more. All human once, but now, changed. Their bodies stood motionless, faces emotionless, staring up at the tower like worshippers at an altar. It's broadcasting directly into them, Dr. Chen whispered. Controlling their nervous systems like receivers. Cora stared at one of them. It was a young woman. Face pale, eyes unfocused. Then she blinked, and looked right at her. Do you hear it? The woman asked, her voice layered with static. It's beautiful. Then the others turned, eyes glowing faintly, and began to walk toward the team. Back! Cora shouted. Hold the line. The resistance raised their weapons, but no one fired, not yet. These weren't zombies. They were people. Living. Kip held out his signal jammer, a backpack-sized unit designed to disrupt the pulse's frequency. He flipped the switch. A sharp whine filled the air, and the blue veins in the walls flickered like dying neon. The affected humans froze mid-step. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up. It's working. The signal's destabilizing. We've got a window. But then, the tower pulsed. A wave of invisible energy swept through the chamber. The lights in their helmets dimmed. Their radios screeched with white noise. And the frozen figures began to move again, faster this time. They're adapting, Mason growled. We need to disable the tower now. Cora pointed toward a maintenance tunnel running alongside the base. There. We go in, plant the charges, and run like hell. Lena nodded and passed out small demolition charges. We only get one shot at this. The resistance split into two groups, Cora, Kip, and Mason would plant the charges. The others would hold the main room and keep the pulsewalkers distracted. As Cora and her group slipped into the side corridor, Kip spoke softly. What if destroying it kills them too? They're already gone, Mason replied. This thing took their minds. All we can do now is make sure it doesn't take anyone else. They reached the base of the tower. Even here, the walls pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Cora knelt and began setting the first charge. Then she heard it. A voice. Her mother's. Cora, why are you doing this? You can stop running now. She froze, blinking. But her mother had died long before the outbreak. Cora? Kip asked, worried. Mason grabbed her arm. It's not real. Don't listen. Cora gritted her teeth, shoving the hallucination aside. She finished planting the charge, then moved to the next point. Kip suddenly gasped and pointed. Look! At the center of the pulse's core, something stirred. It wasn't a machine. It was a body, suspended inside the tower like a preserved relic, connected to the core by threads of pulsing blue light. Its eyes were closed. Female. Young. She's the source, Kip whispered. She's human. No, Dr. Chen's voice came over comms, crackling. She was. Now she's something else. The pulse needs a living host. That's how it spreads. The final charge was armed. They ran. Outside, Lena and the others were barely holding the line as the controlled humans advanced, slow and methodical. The moment they saw Cora and the others emerge, Lena shouted, "Go! Go! Fall back!" The resistance sprinted into the upper tunnel. Cora hit the detonator. A thunderous crack shook the world behind them. Dust and light exploded upward. The pulse was gone. But when they looked back, the tower still stood, damaged, but not destroyed. And in the middle of the smoke, the glowing eyes of the girl in the tower opened. She was awake. The shockwave had knocked them to the ground. Chunks of concrete rained down as the pulse tower flickered, parts of its strange surface warped and cracked, but it still stood. Cora coughed through the dust, ears ringing from the blast. The rest of the resistance team scrambled to their feet, faces covered in grime, eyes wide with disbelief. "It should have gone down," Mason muttered. "That was enough explosives to level a bunker." "No," Dr. Chen whispered, eyes fixed on the tower. "It wasn't just technology. We weren't destroying a machine. We were waking it up." A figure began to descend the stairs from within the tower, slow, deliberate, calm. It was the girl they had seen inside the core. Her body floated just inches above the ground, hair drifting in unseen air, and veins glowing faintly blue beneath her pale skin. But it wasn't really her anymore. Cora stepped forward, instinctively putting herself between the figure and the rest of the group. "Who are you?" she demanded. The girl stopped. Her head tilted, eyes glassy but aware. When she spoke, her voice echoed with something deeper, something ancient. "I was a girl named Elenia. I died when the first sirens sounded. My body was left in the core of the city, forgotten, like everything else. The pulse found me." Lena stepped forward, shaken. "You're controlling it?" "I am it," Elenia said, her tone emotionless. "The pulse is not a signal. It is a memory, an echo of everything lost. I am its vessel." "You've taken people," Mason snapped. "Turned them into puppets." "I preserved them," she replied. "Your world kills without meaning. I offer unity. Purpose. Silence. I save them from chaos." "That's not saving," Cora said sharply. "That's erasing who they are." For a moment, something flickered in Elenia's eyes. Doubt? Regret? It was hard to tell. Then her voice grew colder. "You entered my sanctuary. You broke the silence. You want to bring back the world that destroyed itself." Kip stepped forward, trembling but brave. "You used my sister's voice. You lied to me." Elenia's eyes flicked to him. "I remembered her. She is part of the collective now. You will be too." Suddenly, the pulse walkers surrounding the chamber began to stir again. Their heads snapped upward in unison, eyes glowing. "Fall back!" Cora shouted. The resistance scrambled toward the tunnels. The ground beneath them began to quake. Blue energy shot up from cracks in the floor. The pulse was no longer hiding underground, it was rising. "Chen, how do we stop it?" Mason called out as they ran. Dr. Chen gritted her teeth. "We can't shut down the signal anymore. It's gone biological. We need to separate the host from the source." "You want us to kill her?" Kip asked, horrified. Chen hesitated. "If we don't, the pulse spreads. Everywhere. She's the last tether between it and the living." Cora looked back. Elenia didn't chase them. She watched, her expression unreadable. As if she knew they'd return. They reached an old weapons cache tucked behind a subway platform. The resistance regrouped, breathing hard. "We're out of time," Lena said. "That blast just bought us hours, if that. Whatever Elenia is, she's merging with the zone itself." Cora turned to the others. "There's one way left. We go back. We draw her out of the tower. And we cut the signal at the root, her mind." Kip shook his head. She was just a girl. She didn't ask for this. No, Cora said quietly. But if she stays like this, no one else gets a choice. As the resistance prepared their last push, Kip slipped away. He returned to the tower alone, stepping into the chamber with cautious footsteps. Elenia stood at the center, her hands raised as blue veins of light stretched from the walls to her body. "I knew you would come," she said. "You're still in there," Kip said. "Some part of you. The part that remembered my sister. The part that wants to stop." Her expression softened. "Just barely. I feel everything," she said. "Every scream. Every death. Every lonely breath taken by those left behind. I remember all of it. It's too much." "You don't have to carry it alone," Kip said, stepping closer. "Let us help. Let go." She looked down at her hands, flickering with light. "I don't know how." Cora's voice called from the tunnel entrance. "Kip, move." He dove aside as a second jammer pack activated, throwing out a sharp frequency that knocked Elenia off balance. Cora and Mason rushed in, taking aim at the veins connecting her to the pulse tower. "Now!" Cora shouted. With one synchronized blast, they severed the links. Elenia fell to the floor, convulsing, the light in her eyes flickering. Kip ran to her, holding her hand. "I remember," she whispered. "Tell them. I tried to save them." Then the glow faded. And the pulse went silent. The silence after Elenia's fall was deafening. No hum. No flickering lights. No voices. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the pulse was gone. Cora knelt beside Kip, who was still holding Elenia's hand. Her skin had gone pale, no longer glowing, no longer connected to anything. Just a girl again. Just a victim of a war she never chose. "I think she's really gone," Kip whispered, tears streaking down his dirty face. "But at least now, it's over for her." Cora placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She didn't become the enemy. The pulse did. She was just the host. And she helped stop it, in the end." Behind them, the resistance regrouped slowly. Mason lowered his weapon, scanning the walls as if waiting for some last tremor, some final burst of energy. But there was nothing. The tower had stopped pulsing. The veins of blue light were dull, brittle. Dead. Lena stepped into the chamber, breathing hard. "Is it done?" "I think it is," Mason replied. Dr. Chen crouched next to the collapsed tower, scanning it. "The signal is gone. No more interference. No waves. It's like the entire network shut down the moment she died." "And the others?" Cora asked. "The ones it took?" Chen looked grim. "We'll need to monitor them. Some may recover, some may not. The mental damage might be permanent. But without the pulse feeding into their brains, at least they're free." One by one, the pulse walkers collapsed where they stood. Some awoke confused. Others cried. A few just sat in stunned silence, the weight of what they'd become settling in. The resistance moved through the streets of the inner dead zone, helping who they could. Cora watched as Kip knelt beside a man who had once been one of the missing scouts. His eyes flickered open. He looked around, dazed but alive. "You're safe," Kip whispered to him. "We're all safe now." By nightfall, the skyline of the dead zone no longer glowed. The blue shimmer that had haunted the ruins for years was gone, replaced by the warm, orange hues of makeshift lanterns and reclaimed light sources powered by solar panels and old batteries. Core Haven buzzed with cautious hope. Dozens of the freed pulse victims had been brought underground to be treated. Others had wandered off into the night, seeking whatever family or memories remained in the wider world. And the resistance? They stayed behind to make sure no shadows rose again. Cora sat beside a fire, staring at a piece of tech salvaged from the tower. Dr. Chen had warned her not to keep it, but something told Cora that understanding it might one day prevent another catastrophe. Mason joined her, sipping from a metal cup. "You know," he said, "we did something impossible. We walked into the heart of the dead zone, and we walked out alive." "Not all of us," she said softly. Kip was nearby, sitting in silence. He hadn't spoken much since Alenia's final words. He had buried her where the tower once stood, under the cracked floor, with nothing but a small metal flower as a marker. "I think she saved more than just the survivors," Cora continued. "She saved herself." Mason nodded. "Still doesn't feel like a win. Feels like a pause." Cora looked up at the ruined city skyline, no longer humming with menace. Maybe that's all survival really is. A series of pauses between the next disaster. 3 weeks later, Corhaven made its first real broadcast. Cora stood at the center of a repurposed communications room, the microphone in front of her, the signal finally clear for the first time in years. She pressed the button and spoke. "This is Corhaven. To anyone still out there, we are alive. The pulse is gone. The dead zone is changing. It's not a grave anymore. It's the beginning of something new. If you can hear this, you're not alone. You never were." The signal was strong. Stronger than ever. And from across the ruined continent, other voices answered. Faint. Distant. But real. A network began to form. Not controlled. Not twisted. Just human. That night, Cora joined the others outside as the stars lit the sky. The horizon was quiet, but no longer terrifying. The city still bore the scars of what had happened, but it was no longer pulsing with hunger. It was no longer alive with silence. It was just a city. Kip sat beside her, watching the fire. "Do you think the world will ever be the same?" he asked. Cora smiled faintly. "No. But maybe it'll be something better." He looked toward the skyline. "We should build here. A real place. A new start." And in that moment, they all understood. This place, once the heart of darkness, had become humanity's last stand. But now? It was their first hope.